All right. Bienvenue, Helena. It's great to have you on the Leaders Who Care series and welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Well, I think people are going to see pretty clearly that you absolutely are a leader who cares about getting things done and economically and socially and every other way and whatnot. Let's start with getting to know Helena a little bit, and I don't mean the business stuff yet. I have more of a problem with that with guys because the minute I say tell me about yourself, they tell me their position first, and it drives me crazy. Where you from originally, where you are now, maybe whatever you want to talk about, family, siblings, things like that. Maybe something you've never told anybody, and now you want to reveal to the world. That's always fun too. And and then we'll get to the business stuff. So tell us about Elena.
Thank you. Well, appreciate the personal start. Well, I'll share a few things that will help understand why I built what we built today. So, first thing is I come from a family on my mom's side, Italian musicians, poets, artists. It's a very creative part of the family. So that's Italian mom side, and then on my dad's side, uh, Russian, German, Swiss business people, family business. So, on one side I had the creative side, and the other one.
I get into, I can actually even tell by how you introduce them what they do. Go
So,
ahead.
that's a good segue in terms of, how I operate. So, warmth, creativity, expansion, but also liking to get things done and with structure and building systems and businesses has always been how I've seen how I've just operated based on my background, I think. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that really shaped me growing up as a child, teenager, and adult is that I grew up with a brother, an older brother that had mental health issues, that had personality disorder. And I saw him suffer from when I was pretty much 8 years old up until the time where he passed away. He took his own life. And for me, as much as that was obviously very painful, very painful to see him suffer, very painful not being able to support him, to help him. We tried so many things to get him to feel better, but it wasn't working. And I think so. This actually is what why me and all my sisters we also all care about, okay, how can we make this world just a little bit better, because we've experienced firsthand someone suffering, within the household, within the family household, like a lot of people. This is not a unique story to me. A lot of people go through that with their family.
Mhm.
But I think it made us more sensitive, more empathetic, and more eager to wanting to make a change at whatever level made sense. So for me, it's the environment. My sister is a human rights lawyer, and other members of the family try to make a difference. So I think that's what, shaped me growing up.
Yeah, that's we're influenced in so many ways, and sometimes positive, sometimes negative, that can influence us to do or not do certain things, and etc. How many sisters do you have?
Two, so we're three sisters.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's tough, and I guess as I said before, sometimes it takes horrendous things to get people to do amazing things as a result and stuff. And we do a lot of work in mental health ourselves right now, and it's so excuse me, it's so foundational to everything that we're involved in, obviously. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, and then we'll probably hear maybe a little bit more about it and what you're doing. And so as a kid, since you brought that up, as a kid and a teenager, did you have a leaning towards this side versus that side, the creative versus the business, or did you automatically, hey, this can work together?
Well, I was definitely more growing up, more the creative Italian. And then as I matured, the Swiss, I made sure the Swiss was also integrated in there because I realized that was a better way to to actually create things in the world that would actually flourish and be successful.
You're like the yin yang family, basically, then. Like you get the yin, whatever it's called, the yin and the yang coming together. It actually is the best combination. You have, husband and wife are partners, and one handles the money and one handles the imagination, and they they come together. It's actually fantastic. It's a Swiss knife with some softness to it, or something to that effect. Maybe there. Did
I'd
you?
say so. I'd say so.
Yeah. Did you were you a reader? Did you play sports, music, or all of the above, or what?
So for me, I grew up dancing, so ballet was what I loved doing. And my way to express myself. And that's where I also, discovered, being on stage and enjoying performing as well. So yeah, that was the arts that I started practicing. And that kind of helped my creative side flourish.
It's interesting. I one of my sons had a teacher once that was an athlete, a psychologist, and in theater, and he taught the kids that liked dance but hated geometry, how geometry and dance were related. And he taught the kids that liked dance and or geometry but couldn't dance how they're related and put them together because there's derivatives of all these things that do come together. And I thought it was kind of fascinating. So it looks like you're the prime real life example of how they come together, apparently, with that. And I think we could use more imagination in business as well. So super interesting. I think I could just have the whole podcast on that. I think that's super interesting. But um, your journey, I mean, you started out, and correct me if I'm wrong, bachelor's in environmental studies at the New School, which I love the New School, by the way. I think it's super cool. And then after that, you got your master's in management, organization, and governance at the London School of Economics. You know, not a bad school in itself, also. Um, and you were also experiencing Ashoka and the Clinton Foundation work, kind of at the same time, mostly the masters, I guess. What were you envisioning? What were you thinking about?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I think, um, you know, I was really influenced growing up by a teacher back in high school who told me about the environment, who told me about nature, about waste, about what we could do to have circular business models, etc. And that happened when I was 14. And so that blew my mind and gave me a very clear passion, which I think I was quite lucky to have. So I was quite clear in terms of what I wanted to do. I think back then the sustainability sector was mostly driven by the nonprofit world. Right now, there's a private sector that has emerged. But back then it was mostly nonprofit. So I was, looking for the most impactful nonprofits. So that's why I started the Clinton Foundation, Ashoka as well, and learned a lot from them. But then I realized quite quickly that I was a little too impatient for the nonprofit. And while I really believe that they have a role in society that is needed and necessary and cannot be replaced by any for-profit institutions, I was not the best fit for those organizations. So I learned a lot in these organizations, especially by watching, because when you're very junior, you don't have like very important responsibilities, but you learn a lot by observing others.
Sure.
So it definitely shaped, my way of presenting myself, my way of communicating, of positioning, storytelling, and understood a bit how these foundations were run. And then I moved more to the private sector. But it was very instrumental in terms of shaping and understanding where help was needed.
It's funny, I had a conversation with a lady whose daughter has a summer job shredding the paper that was supposed to go into trash, shredding all the documents in a law firm or something like that. And yet just from that, being around the people and watching what's going on, et cetera, at a high school age, you learn a ton. You may not even realize it, maybe initially, but you learn a ton. So I think it's great advice, if you will, as to what you're saying there about just getting in the door and observing and meeting people is fantastic. And I love what you say about the private industry because when we founded our firm, Fifth Element, it was based on the premise that leaders and their businesses can do way better when they're doing good at the same time. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with making money because otherwise, the can-do social stuff won't be sustainable without the money, basically. And and we also realized in us helping clients find the best talent, the talent wants to make great money and have some purpose at the same time also. They won't have to give up one for the other anymore. So can you share how you evolved? You know, you're an associate at Techstars, also great, a great place. And then you were and then Techstars was an early investor, I believe, in big data for humans, where you were a founding team member. What was that evolution like for you? What were you feeling back then?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. So one thing I must say is that, the I mentioned that somebody who shaped me was my chemistry teacher back in high school who told me about the environment. And what was interesting about her and how it shaped my career trajectory is that she was an environmentalist, but she was a Republican actually. So, right now, the environment is very politicized, right? While she was just saying, it should be everybody's business, like clean air, good food. And so she was one of the few environmentalists, quite a pioneer that was not environmentalist as a Democrat, but an environmentalist as a Republican. This is in Switzerland, so I'm just translating for US context.
Okay.
And so for me, it was very interesting because she showed me just a different way of seeing things. And so is also one of the reasons why I wanted to redirect my career to the for-profit sector, because I wanted to try and understand how can we make things the most efficient way possible, and how can we move capital, how can we build markets, and so that's why I did that. So that's why I went to work for Techstars, which is an accelerator that launches startups in
Mhm.
a typically quite aggressive way to grow fast. And so back then it was mostly technology companies. And so that's why I decided to do that. And I learned a lot, even though it wasn't um, particularly, aligned with sustainability or impact. I learned a lot about what makes a good team. I learned a lot about fundraising, about product, about how to build a sales team. So I learned a lot about just building companies
Okay.
in general, especially kind of like the 0 to 1 phase of getting to, the first 5 million in revenue. So for me, it was super interesting. And then once I felt like I knew enough about this, I used these lessons to start the company that I have now.
So you would, well, first of all, with Big Data for Humans, you were a founding team member there. Were you still with Techstars? Were you still with Techstars and they invested there and then you joined them, or how did it work?
I was working for Techstars initially, and then I joined one of their portfolio companies, and then joined them as a founding team member, and then grew with them, moved to Asia, etc. So I did both, and then stayed with the tech company for a while.
Super cool. So I go back to feelings a lot. What were you feeling? What were you learning? And what experiences really stood out? You talk about building the team and fundraising; those are all key elements, to say the least. Anything that stood out, any special situation that stood out that prepared you to engage in the investor world, and then especially first when you went to top tier impact.
Yeah, so I think, what we did with Investors for Climate, Big Data for Humans, is that we actually, raised capital from Europe, and then we raised capital from Asia. So we raised capital from Tony Fernandez, the founder of AirAsia, which is a big airline out in Southeast Asia. And so we raised that money, and somebody had to open the Singapore office. And so that's the reason why I relocated from London, where we were based with the company, to Singapore. And one thing I learned is that you have to find product market fits before you raise capital from abroad, ideally. And so we were in a situation where we didn't have full product market fit, but we had a lot of capital, and we just started growing in different markets. So it helped me to learn that better off you raise a little bit of capital, start at one market, really get product market fit in that one market. And then once you've scaled and understood the market and your product, and found the product market fit, then you can scale to other markets. So I did learn in terms of fundraising strategy and product and growth that helped me later in my career.
So if you scale too fast, there's more of a chance you might find yourself being somewhat successful really quick, but it's not going to be sustainable.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times founders want to move faster than maybe you should, and maybe it's not a solid beta in this city or that city, and there's nothing. And cities, like you say, I think that's what you meant. Cities and countries and whatnot, same product doesn't fit all the time the same way, right?
Exactly. Very different markets, different needs, different speed of growth. So you can't necessarily replicate the same thing in each market.
So before we moving on to even what you're doing right now, our firm was actually launched at the UN headquarters in New York on International Women's Day. That was one of our first pillars that we did stuff with, and women leadership empowerment. I still believe it's going to be women and moms that are our only chance for peace in the world. Literally, I think. Describe your journey as a woman, even at that stage. And obviously, things have changed a lot, but there's still so much place to go for women and women investment and women leadership. How do you describe your journey as a woman in a world of men, in a world of investment, in a, international, I mean, the whole gambit. How did you navigate and get to be where you are now, without saying like, oh my God, this is so hard or whatever, you know?
Right, right. No, I think that's a very important topic. Obviously, like funding goes to less than 2% of women. So, we know the stats, right? Um, but my experience, to be honest, has been different in the sense that so I was, woman in tech, and then now I'm a woman in finance. Obviously, I was just at Super Return in Berlin, and Super Return is a big private equity venture conference in Europe. And I think there was probably 5% of women in the audience. So this is like a big 20,000 people conference. And so, even though we want to change these stats, and I think that they will change with time, I have to say that it's also been a huge opportunity, and a way also to be differentiated. So, um, it is in a way an honor to be a woman in finance and to be able to move the needle and to be able to have these conversations. And you learn so much, and you're actually able to do things that other people haven't, and there is something exciting about that.
Right.
So I think there's a big opportunity there, and I'm honored to be able to play in that field, especially today as a woman in finance. I think there's a lot to be done, and I enjoy being able to work with both men and women, to get things done. So yeah, so for me it's been a tremendous opportunity.
That's a great way of looking at it. I've been super fortunate to work with a lot of what I would call powerful, influential, make it happen women doing things. And it's really refreshing, actually, versus the older way of most men controlling it. And I love the way you don't look at it as an obstacle. You look at it as a differentiator and stuff like that. I think that's something young women, girls can look up to and should look up to know that they have an opportunity to do that. Um, Moving towards a little bit more about what you're doing right now. They say the fourth industrial revolution is really about AI and tech. But the fifth industrial revolution, if you want to call it that, they're talking a lot about humanity. And with AI going bananas, humanity's become even, again, a bigger, bigger, bigger question of almost like who's in charge? Do we work for the tech or did the tech work for us? Um, it's exciting to see your focus on climate, and I guess that goes back to the chemistry teacher or whatnot back then. Where where you have like unstoppable, and correct me if I'm wrong, supports climate founders that you've selected, um, and and Investors for Climate is a global community of I think it's like over 400, maybe 500 investors. As founder and CEO and co-founder, respectively, if you will, can you describe maybe the missions of both and how they are aligned together, the type of investments you focus on, how much does AI and tech play a part in your decisions and the impact that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, with pleasure.
That's a
So,
long question, I know.
I'll be fast. I'll
No,
make
you're
sure we cover all of that.
fine.
Um, so, we looked at most founders, they look at where is the market, right? And then they build products for where there's market demand. We started from a different angle. We said, where is the problem? Which makes it harder to build a business. So we're like, okay, there's a lack of funding going into climate and sustainability. So we're going to build a company or a for-profit company in order to move capital into sustainability, climate investing, all these verticals that we want to make stronger. Ocean tech is part of that as well. And so we started with, as all entrepreneurs, you think, what do I have that others don't? What we had that others don't is a huge amount of really trusted relationships. So both my co-founder and I were big on relationships. We have, a lot of family office connections that we worked with in the past. And so we said, okay, let's bring all these people that have capital, the families, the fund managers, and the angels. Let's bring them together and start seeing what we can do together. And so we built this network. We're now 400 investors in 32 cities. And basically, what we do with them is very simple. We show them investment opportunities because our big goal is, again, moving capital into climate. So we spotlight, specific companies that have gone through our due diligence so that they can learn about them. You'd be surprised how much just being aware of the possibilities is actually a big factor.
Sure.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we have an investment arm as well. So we do our own investments, which is a new initiative. And then the last thing is that we thought, okay, we get contacted by a lot of founders who are like, help me fundraise. Like, how can I meet investors? Like, how do I tap into these networks? So we also have a founder program, and that's Unstoppable, where we help founders raise capital through our connections, through our, digital marketing abilities to get noticed as well. So, it hasn't been like the most straightforward business model in a sense that, we started with the problem. But I think we're finding our way there, and we feel great. We feel that we're solving for a big problem, and that has been the guiding principle for the company. So that's on what we're doing. And then on your AI question, so obviously it's a topic where it's a very divisive topic, right? AI. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people are excited, some people are scared. So it's a very polarizing topic.
Hmm.
The way I stand on it is that from a founder perspective, a business owner perspective, it is tremendous what it can do for your company. How it has allowed us to grow with having a fraction of the cost of what it would take us in the past. How, for example, I always dreamt of having a personal assistant. I don't need a personal assistant anymore. I have Fixer.ai who drafts my email for me. Um, you know, there's a lot of scheduling as well. So from a founder perspective, a business leader perspective, how much it allows me to do in order to multiply myself is extraordinary. Then from a, philosophical and humanity perspective, it's a different conversation. And like you said, we want to make sure that we put the right checks and balances to make sure that we are actually, using AI to support us and not the opposite.
Yeah, no, I think first of all, I actually love that model of defining the problem first because the whole point is to solve a problem. If you have a company and it doesn't solve a problem, you're not going to get investment and it's not going to work. You're just like a social club until you run out of money, basically. So I love that. And climate gives you a big enough problem to solve in so many different ways. Also, so climate, do you have underlying pillars of climate type of thing? Like you mentioned ocean and whatnot. Are they specific or anything relates to climate?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So right now we're looking at energy transition. So, moving from oil to all the other types of energy that we want to move to. And then we have industrial decarbonization. So, transport, manufacturing, how do we make these big carbon intensive industries carbon light?
Mhm.
Cement, for example, sustainable cement would be an example. And then, so this is, I think, where there's still demand from the market. And now if we look at the need, again, back to our conversation earlier, obviously biodiversity is a vertical that requires a lot of capital that is not really venture investable yet. It is to some level, but it could be better. Or ocean tech is still emerging, asset classes that are just starting. So I think it's about balancing where people are actually interested in investing because there's real returns, and others where the returns are, more philanthropic, so no return. And being able to balance that. Obviously, in the US, climate is definitely not trendy right now. It's quite the opposite.
You
So,
think?
we are, during these times, we're focusing more on Europe and Asia as markets and navigating the US carefully during these times. But we're not following a trend. We're in it because we believe in it. So we're in it for the long run for integrity. So that's how we look at it.
Yeah, I love it. And I think investors and founders and whatnot in the long run will look at who really cares, if you will, and who really has the intent to solve this problem. not just doing it because it's a cool thing to do right now, type of deal. I actually remember when I lived in Miami, everybody when the .com thing, everybody starts putting .com after their name when that happened. Or I remember everybody started putting green before their name because it was the to put green. I remember there was a furniture company that changed its name from World Furniture to Green World Furniture, which we thought was like ridiculous. That's the type of trends you're talking about that are not really for real. And so I love the fact you do that. And I know recently we communicated about generational health. Climate and environment affects our health generationally also. Is that a new area you're looking at potentially, or how does health fit into your model, if you will?
To be honest, we definitely believe in it, but we can't do everything. So we had to pick one,
Yeah.
and we're we're focused on climate and sustainability, and so not in health. We believe in it as a vertical, obviously, but we're not the ones taking care of that.
Okay, got it. Um,
It's important to focus.
Focus is good. You can be too wide, or you can take on so many things and then not do anything on any one of them if you're not really focused. Um, so what's your um, what would you like to tell young women coming into this world right now, coming out of college, let's say, or if you think back, to when you started, what would you tell yourself about entering this world right now? And why this is maybe a great area to come into, or what they should be doing, maybe develop relationships. What would be your advice to yourself back when?
Ooh, I love that question. That's a good one. So if I was speaking to my 20-year-old self,
Mhm.
one thing I would say is to be confident, to punch way above your weight, because most successful people do. And that's how you build great things. So I would say, don't listen to if you have a little voice in your head that tells you, oh, you're not good enough, whatever, whatever enough, something enough, to just not listen and just be bold, punch way above your weight. And if you have that attitude, great things will happen. And I think the world rewards these people that do that and have that attitude. And you figure it out along the way. Nobody completely knows what they're doing. Everybody is, making it up as they go. So that would be my number one advice. Yeah, punch way above your weight.
I think it's great advice. Our brain seems to try to tell us to be safe most of the time rather than to go for it based on experiences the brain may have. So I think that's actually great, great advice. And I learned a long time ago from different people in sports and other things that you don't win and lose, you win and learn, basically. And it's the way to go. Well, we say in LA that you got to keep the audience wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we might have to do a sequel, but I have one more question on this part. Um, a client told me in 2021, a client told me about 2020, the year of the pandemic. He said, that year was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it was like kind of a brilliant comment because it seemed to go slow, but then we're already 5 years away from it. And sometimes it feels like it was yesterday at the same time. With all that's happened, and here we are, the last half of 2025 already, what are you most grateful for and what are you most hopeful for?
I like that question. You have some good question, Mark. I'm impressed.
That was pretty
Um,
good. You have a good question, Mark. That was good. Uh,
um, so I would say what I'm grateful for is, because I was in a way, I learned about loss early on. It helped me in a way. I saved a lot of time. I learned a lot of lessons that people maybe learn later on in life. I learned them when I was younger. And so for me, just, the gift of waking up every morning and being able to start a new day, just, that simple thing, oh, I'm alive. I woke up this morning. For me, that's the first thing I tell myself in the morning because it's so easy, to get caught into whatever, your WhatsApp blowing up or whatever, all the things you got to do. And just to be like, I'm in my 30s and I know two women who died of breast cancer in the last week. And so, just being able, I'm alive, I get to do whatever I want today, I get to create. I get to start over. That's the biggest thing that I try to remember every morning. Um, so I think that's the big part. And what was your second question? I got it.
And what are you most hopeful for?
Oh, I'm hopeful that yeah, that people get empowered, that they can, be creative, that they know, creativity is one of the only thing that AI cannot replace, and we will be really relying on people's creativity to solve problems. And that's really what's unique about us. So that people can cultivate their creativity, their curiosity, um, and solve big problems, not be afraid of solving big problems, and also not never forget that the world was always changed by just a few people getting together. And so sometimes we get a little depressing, like the state of the world, the war, etc. But be like, actually change was always made by a few committed people who work together. So not underestimate what we can do. I think if we focus on something for at least a decade, I think that's important. When I was younger, I always thought, oh, I'll just give it 2 years. No, no, no. You need like a proper decade if you want to move the needle, even 2 decades. So I think if we have that long term perspective, we can achieve a lot.
Yeah, I love that. You've heard of Fleetwood Mac? Do you know the band Fleetwood Mac?
Yes. Yes.
There's a great song, I can't remember the name of the song, but it says, "Thunder always happens when it's raining.
Right.
Players only love you when they're playing." And I think it's right on the money, like, as what you just said. The thunder is the action, the go get 'em, the bang,
Yeah,
raining, and players only love it when they're playing, not when they're not playing. And so,
exactly.
yeah,
And change is not linear. Things don't happen linearly. Nothing happens and then a lot of things happen. And so you have to think that change is exponential. So when you're working on something, it's not because nothing has happened in the last 2 years that nothing will happen tomorrow. And so reminding ourselves that that's how things move. It's not linear.
it's a great example, and it kind of relates to relationships. They don't just happen in a second, as well. You got to build them, and then they're super strong. Congrats on all you do, and helping the climate and the people and everything. And I understand your partners in Singapore, correct?
Yes, I'm lucky. I have an exceptional co-founder, who's mother of four and a very busy lady who has two nonprofits, sits on a lot of boards, and she's always available. And she's out in Asia, so I'm very fortunate to have her as my co-founder.
And vice versa, I'm sure she would say as well. So,
No, we're lucky we found each other.
yeah. Hey, thank you for being a leader who cares. Thank you for all you do. And it's great to have you on the series. And we'll be watching and seeing all the great stuff to come.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciated your thoughtful question and your preparation and the depth of the discussion. It makes a difference.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.